Three, two, one, go. Welcome back, Internauts. Today I want to start taking a run down the path of economics and monetary system. Start with understanding two basic concepts or principles that are required for getting a good grasp on the monetary system. And one of those is value, and the other one is scarcity. So today we're going to take a look at those two items. There's a lot to cover in terms of the monetary system and money itself and economics. We're not going to get into any sort of deep thing in any stretch of the imagination. I have no training or formal background in economics or money, and me and money don't get along very well anyway. But I've learned a lot. I do a lot of reading, a lot of videos, and basically you can strip things down to a very base level and start to get a good understanding of what's going on. But until we get a grasp of value and scarcity, the rest of it really doesn't mean much, and you won't be able to see the actual corruption and fraud that exists within our monetary system without understanding these two concepts. So first off, we'll just take a quick look at the old Googler and definition, just a dictionary definition. It comes up with a few items, but the one we're going to look at and focus on for our discussion here is the first one under the noun, and it's the regard that something has held to deserve, the importance, worth, or usefulness of something. So what we've seen in recent years, recent decades, perhaps even longer than that, marketers and generally anybody that's trying to part you with your cash have taken this concept of value and turned it into basically a monetary item. So the idea is that the cheapest price is the best value there, but value is something totally different than that. There is that little component of a dollar attachment to it, without a doubt. It's how our economy's kind of working right now. We've got money in exchange for goods and services, but it's not really the price per se. We're going to set that aside, and we're going to look at expanding on this definition. So we're going to take it to another level here. We're going to move over to the von Mises Institute. Ludwig von Mises was a economist down at the turn of the century, just after 1900s, and he was a spectacular individual. He's well ahead of his time. He's very highly respected amongst his peers. Personally, this is where I've stumbled upon and ended up and stayed here at this Austrian school. Again, my limited economics training and stuff. But nonetheless, this is the kind of thing that just rang true to me. One of the Austrian school fundamentals is minimal government, if any, interference in the marketplace, and truly a free marketplace. No creating currencies, just let the market do its thing. I'm personally not one for consumerism. I think we need to move away from all of that stuff, but that's a long road to take. So we got to deal with what we've got right now, and so therefore we do have purchasing commerce in our day-to-day lives. So. Looking at what von Mises had to say here about value, we're just going to take, I'm not cherry picking here, I'm just pulling out the stuff that's relevant to our discussion. There's a lot surrounding value and the whole concept of it, and some theories and philosophies behind it, but we're just going to pull out the stuff that's relevant to our discussion of the monetary system in the goal of helping you to understand the monetary system at a very basic level and start to realize that the thing is a fraud and needs to be changed. We don't need to get into rocket science degrees in economics here to figure that out. So we're going to look at the value and ends thing, and what Mises is saying here is value is the importance that acting man attaches to ultimate ends. So a couple quick definitions here. Mises used acting man, and again, turn of the century in the 1900s, man was a container for humanity, not necessarily a man or woman. So acting man is basically, you wake up in the morning, what gets you out of bed? Or you would just lie there. Inertia would dictate that you would just lie there and atrophy and die and turn into dust, and that would be the end of it. But we do get out of bed every day to do something, and so the acting man is getting that action, that doing something, whatever it may be, and it may be as simple as getting clothes on to clothe yourself. Those are actions and acting, and those are also ultimate ends. So what we find is, we think of goals and attaining goals, and these are kind of, well, I got to save and work really hard, and my goal is to get my PhD or to move to another country or to do this or to do that, these big type of things. But kind of neglect or just don't pay attention to ultimate ends and goals that happen on a very small scale all the time without us thinking about it. So just thinking about that previous example of getting dressed, your ultimate end is to put clothes on, but the action is getting dressed. An ultimate end is to get your children to school on time, get them out to the bus stop or whatever. That is an ultimate end that happens, for most of us every day. But we don't really think about that as a goal or an end, but it is indeed. And so what gets you to act and to do that, to actually get persons and your children and whatnot out to a school bus on time, for example? So we'll look at a couple more examples on that going forward. So the second item I want to look at here with Mises is value is not intrinsic. It is not in things. It is within us. It is the way in which man reacts to the conditions of his environment. So let's get to the example stage, because that's where I learn best, and so that's what I have to do, hopefully for you. If not, off you go to your favorite search engine. You can find all this stuff and just read about it. So I have here a pair of simple scissors. So we've got a plastic top and a metal bottom, and they're stuck together, and they cut things. So in creating these pair of scissors, we've got plastic, we've got the manufacturing of the plastic, we've got the steel, we've got the manufacturing of the steel, we've got the putting it all together, packaging it up, and shipping it off to a particular store. But that is not in itself value. That is basically a sum of cost. There's a cost incurred by the plastic raw material, the labor, the milling, the steeling, whatever is involved in making these scissors. But that is a cost, a summary of a cost. It's not a value. When we take this pair of scissors into a room of people that are just about ready to cut paper and don't have any sort of cutting utensil, suddenly this now has great value. But the value is proposed by the people that are in the room because of a need to, or a tool to get to an end. And the end is the cutting of the paper. How are we going to get to the cutting of the paper? We need this particular tool in order to facilitate that and make that easy. So suddenly this has value to it, but it's not the scissors themselves, the physical thing. It's the fact that we as a human require that to our end, to accomplish our end, which is cutting of the paper in this example. So if we look at it conversely, turning that over, if we go into a room of people that are slapping rocks and crushing them, they're not going to take their scissors. It really doesn't have any value to them. They're not interested. Now, if I showed up with a sledgehammer or a jackhammer, that's a different story altogether. Conversely, you take those two tools into the paper people, and the value doesn't really exist for those because they don't need them. They need these scissors. So let's use one more example. Just to kind of drive that point home. We'll go to small town Nunavut, and we'll go to small town Equator. So if I show up in small town Nunavut with an ice cube tray, ice cube making material, and a chest freezer, not going to be a really good sell there. That old adage, I can sell ice cubes to Eskimos. There's not really a value to there because we don't need it. The end is keeping my food preserved. At 8 months or 9 months of the year when it's cold enough to leave the stuff out on the porch, I don't need this freezer type thing. So it's going to be a hard sell for them. There's not really a value proposition there. Conversely, down south, if I show up with a furnace and fireplaces in the equator lands, again, same thing. It's not really a huge need for this. There's not a desire. Most folks don't have an end or an ultimate goal, an end of staying warm via artificial methods. They only have to open their window and it's warm enough. So, but now, all things being equal, so that means in this case no shipping costs. If we swap those back and we take the fireplaces and furnace up to Nunavut, and we bring the ice making machine down to small town Equator, suddenly these have a value to them. It has totally changed. And why is that? That is because man, in this case, our examples, are reacting to the condition of their environment. The value is not intrinsic. It is not in things themselves, because they never change. When we took it to Equator versus Nunavut and vice versa, those objects didn't change. They were still the exact same thing, made the exact same way, and with the exact same function. But because we changed the environment that the people and these items are in, suddenly the value proposition completely changes. And again, it has nothing to do with price here. We're not talking about cost. We're talking about whether I care, whether I want this or not. So that is a value. A bit more here that we'll deal with on a later session, because value has a few more steps involved in it. But for moving forward at this point in time, that's basically what we need to know. So with value comes its friend, scarcity. Scarcity, we could almost say that these are almost twins, because they kind of go hand in hand. So scarcity, perceived or otherwise, actually changes value, puts an increase in the value or a decrease in your value. And generally speaking, everything we are dealing with on our planet, generally speaking, is of some sort of scarcity. It's kind of like the musical chairs where you've got 12 people and 11 chairs. If you had 12 and 12, basically you'd walk around, you'd sit down. No big deal. But when we have 12 and 11, suddenly it's a big deal to sit down and get into that chair before somebody else does, because it's a scarcity type thing, and our value is to get our butts into that chair. That's our ultimate end. And so the value we put on that is to do that, but it's directly tied to a scarcity. So a perfect example for this one is air. It's mentioned here in the Mises definition of scarcity. And so if you look at air is all around us. I can exist, maybe not for a long term, but I still can exist near polluting places. I breathe in and out. I last longer than the 3 minutes if I'm in a vacuum. When I've got nothing, I'm toast. So I don't really think so much of air. Air is not in my mind, even though it's essential for our life. It's not in the forefront of my mind when I'm going out to accomplish my task. So when I think of taking the kids to the bus stop to get to the school on time, I don't really think of air as part of the means to an end or some sort of critical value thingy. I know it's there, it's in the back of my head, but it's not really in my forefront and don't need to because of its abundance. Now let's introduce a scarcity. So we've moved to the moon. Suddenly there is no air on the moon. Now we've got a totally different ballgame here. The value proposition on air itself expands greatly because we have a very limited supply of it. It's very, very scarce. So therefore, suddenly we've got a big value attached to that. Secondly, I've got to containerize that air because I've got to walk the kids out in the zero atmosphere to the bus stop. Therefore, I need that air to breathe in that container to get there and get back and survive. Now it has suddenly become a means to the fulfillment of my end. So the means is the air in my tank to breathe. Fulfillment of my end is getting the kids to the bus stop on time. So they could get to school. It's that simple. It's that basic. And so you think of things in your life that are scarce, and you look at Black Friday or any of these sales are absolutely, Christmas sales are, aside from a disaster, they're a perfect example of this. Because if I need a TV, well, I'm going to change that, but need versus want are two different things. But we'll worry about that some other day. We'll argue semantics. But I need a TV. My other one just blew up. So I want to have this TV. So I look at my flyers and go, oh, look at this, a Boxing Day sale. They've got my TV. It's $299. It's 50 inches, exactly what I'm looking for. Unlimited supply at the warehouse. You know what? So I get up Boxing Day. I have breakfast. I have my coffee. I talk to people. I go out, maybe mow the lawn, shovel the driveway, depending where I are, do the thing. Then I'll roll out in the afternoon after my lunch, and I'll go and get my TV, come back, and we're good for Saturday night, hockey game or Sunday night movie or whatever we want to do. Change that now to that flyer saying there's only 10 per store. And you know what? The birds are still sleeping when I'm up and out the door to get the dang TV. And so that totally changed my deal because of a scarcity. In this case, it was a manufacturer scarcity because the vendor, chose to either only say that they've got that many or have that many. But we have a scarcity involved, which changes the value, which changes your action. It changes now. It's a means. Now, a scarcity is getting you up and out before the sun even goes, as opposed to not really caring before because you can get there whenever you want. So you can see where scarcity then fits in. So just start to think about how these two things in your everyday life, value and scarcity, away from the dollar thing, stay away from the best prices, the best deal. It's not. And, another good way to throw a value around in some esoteric manner is convenience. So let's look at it this way. We go to the dollar store. I've got an object at the dollar store, and I've got an object in the store right beside it. I use both of them. But the one at the dollar store, I pay, a cheap dollar thing, and it breaks every 2 or 3 weeks. The one I would buy is significantly more at the store next door, but it doesn't break. Getting from one place to another is an active effort. I've got to get out. I got to, say in the wintertime, for example, here in Canada, I've got to get out, maybe shovel the driveway, clean the car off. It's cold, bundle up there. So there's a big production in getting from one to the other. So I think of myself, okay, well, I can pay $1.50 for this thing. It breaks all the time, and I can replace it. It's only $1.50. No worries. The way we go, as opposed to $10 for the other one. All right, good to go. So we look at that and we say, yeah, best price is the thing. But let's think about that for a second. That thing breaks all the time. That means I have to do that production process to go and get a replacement every wherever our breakage point is. Whereas if I purchase the other one at a higher price, but I never have to go back and do this production to replace it again. Now suddenly I have a value proposition built into this higher price. So therefore, the higher price wins in this case, in my particular case anyway, because convenience has a value to me. So the higher price wins because I only have to go once, I get my product, I come home, and we're good to go. I never have to worry about going to get that one again, as opposed to the other person that's going back and forth all the time, even though they may, in the course of a lifetime, only use $5 worth of that product, and I pay $10 for it. I throw in the fact that I didn't have to go those other 5 times to pick that up through that process to get it. So there's another way of looking at value, but there's lots of them out there. So I invite you to, think about it. Just think about value and scarcity and value in your life and what you value in terms of, we've talked about products and stuff, but it's all sorts of things. It's your family, it's your life, it's your existence. All across the board, you have a value of something or you wouldn't care. And we clearly do in many cases. So hopefully that gets us started. We got lots to cover in this. We'll do this bit by bit by bit, but have a great day. Value your existence here on planet Earth. I hope you have an excellent day doing so. Ciao for now.